This is Modern Day Town Crier, brought to you by Padaze Media. Everyone has a story to tell, but not all stories get told. But this is the story of the African child. This is the sad, pathetic, nostalgic, provocative history of Akebran, the one we call Africa. In the year 1789, William Wilberforce, after 300 years, the slave trade has begun to lose its shine and sheen. William Wilberforce, sitting in the British House of Commons, moved the motion for the abolition of slave trade. Abraham Lincoln, in 1862, signed the papers for the emancipation of slave trade. But the slave masters were not yet satisfied. They began to sort a way to colonize Africa. Otto von Bismarck called the conference for all the European powers to gather in Berlin, what has been described by so many commentators as the Berlin Conference. Pan-Africans call it the partition for Africa, the scramble for Africa. For Africans were shared like a piece of meat on a table without us being represented. And in that meeting, the Spaniards were there, the English were there, the Francophone were there, the Italians were there, the Belgians were there, the Germans was there. Of course, it was their own. Berlin is their capital, but Africans were not represented. And then King Leopold of Belgium made his way to Congo and caught the hands of so many Congolese, killed 15 million of them, cut their hands and legs for low supplies of diamond. And then the French made their way to Burkina Faso and called them Upper Volta. The Burkinabés revolted and said, no, we are not Upper Volta, we are Burkina Faso. The English made their way to Ghana and called them Gold Coast, for gold was their attraction. But Ghanaians refused and said, we are not Gold Coast, we are Ghana. And again, the English made their way to Nigeria. Lord Lugard in 1900 was already in Nigeria, and in 1914 he amalgamated tribes. They are barely tolerated each other. But how was Nigeria before Lord Lugard came? It may shock you to know that in the early 19th century, Uthman Danfodio, the Fulanese conquered Habe, which could be called the Hausa state. They conquered them through jihad. The jihad could be seen as a religious or political jihad. It was led by a man called Uthman Danfodio. Uthman Danfodio introduced a centralized and standing political system of government. And in this government, he created caliphates. These caliphates were created in two, Sokoto and Wandu caliphates. Each of the caliphates were created into emirates. And he appointed emirs who were in charge of these emirates. The emir were to make sure that there are peace and order, that the people paid their taxes. The emirs owe allegiance and subjection to Uthman Danfodio. Uthman Danfodio was in charge of them all. The people saw the emir as a supernatural leader. His yes was yes, and his no was no. The house of Fulani pre-colonial days was very, very centralized. There were people in charge of positions. You had the Waziri, he was the head of the officials. You had the Galadima, he was the head of the capital. You had the Madawaki, he was the commander of the army. You had the Dogari, he was the head of the police. You had the Maji, he was the treasury officer. You had the Salikin Roa, he was the head of the fishing place. You have the Salikin father, he was the head of the palace workers. You had the Salikin father, he was the head of the butcher, the one you call abattoir. So the house of Fulani pre-colonial days was very, very centralized. So the houses and the Fulanis have been paying taxes even before the Lugard arrived in Nigeria. So when the Lugard came and for a show had a tea one morning and said, these people are in the Niger area, Nigeria, and we got our name from a woman who happens to be a mistress. But unfortunately, no one was able to challenge the name like they happened in Ghana and they happened in Burkina Faso. So the Lugard enjoyed himself in the northern part of Nigeria because taxation was what they built the empire of the British colonialism upon. How was the Yorubas? When you go to the Yorubas, the highest ruling empire was the Oyo Empire. The Oyo Empire was so powerful that she had influence in Dahomey. Who was the highest? Was the Alafin. The Alafin. History portrayed that he was seen only once in a year by its subjects. The Alafin was a king, and he had Bashorun, who happens to be his prime minister, and he had 7 hereditary kingmakers, the Oyomesi, and he had the head of the army called Ora Onakakanfo. Needless to say, Ora Onakakanfo, when he loses a battle, was forced to go into exile, and he must come from a poor home, never allowed to go into the capital of Oyo, so that he would not be exposed to the beauty of life. And they had the Ogboni confraternity. The Ogboni confraternity was like the judicial system of today in their days. So the 7 hereditary kingmakers who were the Oyomesi checkmate the excises of their laughing. The Ogboni confraternity checkmate the excises of the 7 hereditary kingmakers who were Oyomesi. And when the king, your laughing mess up, he is forced to open a ballot egg, which is a forceful way of committing suicide, which you could be called today as impeachment. But the people always bring tribute to their laughing as a subject of a king. So when the Lugard came to the southwestern part of Nigeria, the Yorubas, he found something similar to what he had in the north. So he enjoyed himself in the north. Then the Lugard made his way to the southeast parts among the Igbos. How was the Igbo pre-colonial days? They had Okpara. Each family had 4 title holders. The oldest of them all becomes the Okpara. The Okpara presides over the meeting of all the 4 title holders. They had the Omuada, powerful women who were in charge in distribution of titles. They had the 8th grade who were in charge of making sure that the territory is being protected. The Okpara was the most eldest and precise over their meeting. But the Okpara could not tell the people what to do because the Igbos were the originators of direct democracy. So when the Lugard came among the Igbos, he held the Okpara responsible. The Okpara could not hold the people accountable because when he told the Okpara, tell the Igbos they are going to pay taxes, the Igbos, having the minds of their own, told the Okpara, we cannot do this. And Lord Lugard was frustrated. He went berserk. What these people who do not listen to the voice of their king. So in 1914, Lord Lugard, throughout their own selfish interest in the West to enlarge the coast of British Empire, to exploit people that barely tolerate each other, he amalgamated them in 1914. And when Lord Lugard was done, he left Nigeria, but he was here between 1914 to 1919. When he was done, his brother came, Sir Clifford, and he stayed between 1919 to 1925. When he was done, he left, and his brother came, Sir Donald, and he stayed between 1925 to 1931. When he was done, he left, and his brother came, Sir Bernard, and he stayed between 1935 to 1943. And when he was done, he left, and his brother came, Arthur Richard, and he stayed between 1943 to 1948. And when he was tired, he left, and his brother came, and he stayed between 1948 to 1955, and that was McPherson. When McPherson was tired, he left and his brother came, and that was James Robinson, and he stayed between 1955 to 1960, when it was obvious that Africans were beginning to agitate to regain independence from their slave masters, whom they call colonial masters. What happened? They decided to give to an indigenous man. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe became the ceremonial head. Tafawa Balewa, the prime minister, on the 1st of October 1960, Nigerians celebrated, and the town criers sound their guns, and the people danced and celebrated freedom at last. Unbeknownst to them, this is just freedom to be free, because even in 1960, both Tafawa Balewa and Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe were still taking directives from the Queen of England until 1st October 1963, when Nigeria became a republic. Now we are free to govern ourselves. And again, the town criers raised their gong, and the people danced to celebrate Nigeria being a republic. The full nose down into Nigeria being a republic. There was crisis in the country. Action Group crisis of the southern west of Nigeria, Akintola and Awolowo, dragging who will be the Western Premier. And in the north, there was Kano riot. In the east, there was nepotism. And then 3 years into the republic, on the 15th of January 1966, Chukwuma, Kaduna Nzogo, and other young military officers in the army who were disgruntled with the civil unrest of what is happening in the country, carried out a coup d'etat. This coup d'etat took the life of prominent Nigerians. Tafawa Balewa, he was killed. Amadu Bello, who happens to be the Northern Premier, he was killed. Samuel Akintola, who happens to be the Western Premier, he was killed. Samuel Ademulegun, a senior military officer, he was killed. The then Finance Minister, Okotie-Eboh, he was killed. And 19 others, including top military officers, were all killed in the coup d'etat. And then the highest military officer, Aguiyi Ironsi, took over power. But unfortunately, 6 months into it, he was assassinated on the 29th of July 1966 in Ibadan, when he went to visit his friend Francis Fujiyi, who happens to be the military governor of the Western Nigeria. Fujiyi refused that Aguiyi would not be killed under his watch. And then the soldiers who came for Aguiyi killed both of them, and their body was found along our road in Ibadan. And that was the end of Aguiyi Ironsi. And then Yakubu Gowon, a 31 years old bachelor at that time from Jos, took over power. And there was pogrom in the north that saw the death of over 30,000 Easterners who were predominantly Igbos. Ojukwu sacked all other people who were staying in the southeast and asked all the Easterners to return to their place, saying their people were being killed in the north. Gowon and Ojukwu went to Aburi to reach an agreement. When they came back, Gowon said no. And then Ojukwu said Aburi must stand. And then between July, there was a war in the country. 3 years saw the death of so many people. But it is pertinent and imperative you know the military installations in Nigeria and their locations before the Civil War. Before the 1967 to 1970 Civil War, these were the military installations in Nigeria and their locations. The 3rd Battalion was in Kaduna. The 5th Battalion was in Zaria. The 1st Field Battery Artillery was in Kaduna. The 1st Field Squadron Engineers was in Kaduna. 88th Transport Regiment were in Kaduna. 44 Military Hospital was in Kaduna. Nigeria Military Academy was in Kaduna. Ordnance Depot was in Kaduna. Nigeria Military Training College was in Kaduna. 6th Battalion, while under formation, was in Kaduna. Revenant Squadron and Regimental Headquarters was in Kaduna. Ammunition Factory was in Kaduna. Nigeria Air Force was in Kaduna. Recruit Training Depot was in Zaria. Nigeria Military School, NMS, was in Zaria. 4th Battalion was in Ibadan. 2nd Field Battery Artillery was in Abeokuta. 2nd Regimental Headquarters was in Abeokuta. 1st Battalion was in Enugu. That was the only thing in the southeastern part of Nigeria, and that was what Ojukwu seized to fight the rest of the country, and what his people constructed for him that they called in their local parlance Ogboniwe, meaning that would kill a large population. The war lasted for 3 years. On the 5th of October 1967, Lieutenant Colonel Murtala Mohammed made his way to Asaba. When the federal troops got into Asaba, they were shooting spasmodically in the air. They caused tension, pandemonium, and fear among the people of Asaba. According to eyewitness, the federal troops were seen kicking the doors of people who were living in the town, dragging men who were suspected allegedly to be sympathizers of the Biafran soldiers, and some of them were shot before their loved ones. On the 6th of October, the young men of Asaba ran into nearby bushes, but their leaders called them out and asked the town crier, "Call out the people of Asaba." The town crier called out the people of Asaba on the 6th of October 1967, calling the people to come out from all the cranny and nooks of Asaba. And the people came out in their numbers, and in solidarity they marched, and in one voice they screamed, "One Nigeria, one Nigeria, one Nigeria," authenticating to the federal troops that they are for Nigeria and not for the Biafran, just so their life could be spared. When they were marching on the evening of the 7th of October 1967, the federal troops were seen guiding the people to a particular square and started immediately separating boys from men and men from women and women from girl children. When they were doing this, the people of Asaba noticed that something was fishy, that something was wrong, that something outlandish was going on. Immediately, the women of Asaba followed their instinct, removed their clothes, their blouse and their wrapper, and started disguising their men so that they would not be taken to the section where men were being taken. But while this were going on, the federal troops released gunshot on the place where men were being gathered. The city of Asaba was quiet. That day, the exact number of people that died was around 500 to 800 people. This number could be more than. The people flee into bushes, people who were surviving. The threat of rape hung in the air. Women were forcefully raped, and girls were taken by force into marriage. Young men who were left ran into nearby bushes in the southeast. That evening of 7th of October 1967, women were seen dragging the dead bodies of their husbands to be buried. A whole lot of the bodies were buried in the mass grave. The city of Asaba will not forget that day. But the tragic history of what happened during the civil war in Asaba was never told, because everyone has a story to tell, but not all stories get told. But late in the 1970s, the news of the Biafran soldiers, the news of the Biafran children who were being killed in the Kwashiorkor act of the quest for genocide began to spread around the world. And then the news of the Biafran war began to gain international recognition. But the war ended in 15 January 1970, and the federal government screamed, "No victor, no vanquish." And the Igbos were given £20 to start their life afresh. And then Yakubu Gowon, knowing that the country is being run in hatred, decided to come out with 3 hours after the civil war in Nigeria. 3 hours, 1 hour for reconciliation, 1 for rehabilitation, and 3 hours for reconciliation, knowing that the country is passing through negative ethnicity because the war was over, but the people that fought the war still lingers in hatred. So reconciliation to reconcile the tribes that fought the civil war, rehabilitation to change the mindset of war, reconstruction to reconstruct all that have been lost in war and covered in debris. But Yakubu Gowon didn't stay for long, and these hours were forgotten, because Yakubu Gowon introduced NYSC, National Youth Service Corps, so that the youths who were Easterners can go to the north, and the youths in the north can come to the west, and the youths in the west can go to the east, and the country can go in vice versa. Oh, Yakubu Gowon, try to restore what is unrestorable, because the country is made up of different nations trying to make different one country. Oh, Nigeria passed through so many hate and negative ethnicity, nepotism, passed through so many kind of predilection and prejudice. The country went through much nepotism, predilection and prejudice, that even the town criers had their wars for a long time. And then Gowon on 29th July 1975 went to a meeting in Kampala, OAU summit to be precise. He was called, "Gowon, don't come back again," for Murtala Muhammad has taken over. Murtala Muhammad took over the affairs of the government of the day and became the new military head of the country. Unfortunately, Murtala Muhammad spent 6 months and 15 days in office. He was assassinated on his way to Tutam Barak on 13 February. He was killed in a coup d'etat that was arranged by Bukadimka. Bukadimka was caught and assassinated. The vice to Murtala Muhammad, Olusegun Obasanjo, took over the head of state, and he was there between 1976 to 1979. And then, for the first time, the military fulfilled their promise of handing over to a democratic civilian elected government. Election was conducted in 1979, and Shehu Shagari with Dr. Alex Ekwueme emerged as the democratic civilian president of the country. And again, in 1983, they contested and won it in August. But unfortunately, on 31st December 1983, General Muhammadu Buhari struck in a coup d'etat and took over the government of the day. General Muhammadu Buhari. Muhammadu Buhari became the head of state in Nigeria, and then 2 days into office, he listed the number of all the corrupt leaders and all the corrupt ministers in the country. Topping the list was Omar Adiko. He was allegedly involved in a $6 billion deal, and he ran to Britain. Muhammadu Buhari asked that the British government should release him to face trial in Nigeria, but they refused because his stolen wealth was booming their economy. Muhammadu Buhari orchestrated the kidnapping of Omala Dikko, and on the 5th of July 1984, Omala Dikko was kidnapped from Britain. But unfortunately for Buhari, when he was being taken into the airport, the British government found out and he was released. This caused a sour diplomatic relations between Nigeria and Britain. In fact, the British government sacked the High Commissioner of Nigeria and Britain at that time. And because of that single act from Buhari, the colonial masters who were still in Nigeria through what was called neo-colonialism and imperialism orchestrated another coup d'etat that was led by Madam Ibrahim Babangida on 27th August 1985, which was described as a palace coup. Babangida took over the government of the day. Babangida became the head of state from 27th August 1985 to 26th August 1993. When Nigerians were no longer interested, they asked him to step down. But instead, he stepped aside, organized an election that saw the emergence and the popularity of MKO Abiola. But while the election was still on, and MKO Abiola was allegedly topping the voting process, Babangida called for the stop of the election and declared it null and void. Babangida stepped aside and gave the government to an interim government of Shenikan. Shenikan lasted few months, 3 months in power. Abacha took over. Oh, Nigerians screamed, a tyrant has taken over. And then MKO Abiola died in the prison, and there was civil unrest in the country. But everyone has a story to tell, but not all stories get told. Abacha died in power in 1998, and his vice took over, Abu Salim Abubakar. Abu Salim Abubakar took over and handed over to a civilian government of Olusegun Obasanjo. When he was given state pardon, he contested in 1999 and won under the People's Democratic Party, PDP. Olusegun Obasanjo became the president of the Fourth Republic of Federal Republic of Nigeria. In 2007, Umara Musa Yar'Adua contested and won under the leadership of People's Democratic Party, PDP. Umara Musa Yar'Adua, the man who came with 7-point agenda, but unfortunately, he never lived to see it done, for he kicked the bucket and went upstairs and rested on the cold hand of death. And his vice, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, the man from South, took over. And again, he contested and won. Contested again in 2015 and lost to the man from Daula, Muhammadu Buhari, who was previously a general on 31st December 1983. But this time around, he came back as a civilian because he has removed the military uniform and put on a wada, and that has automatically turned him into a civilian. But the people forget that a soldier is known by his mentality and not by what he puts on. The man from Daura became the president of Nigeria through the umbrella of a coalition political party that became APC. And then, on 29th May 2023, after what was seen as one of the worst elections ever held in the country, so many rigging and so many carrying of ballot papers and snatching of it by thugs, Bola Ahmed Tinubu became the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And rather than shouting, the people were quiet, for something unusual has happened. But then, after so many years of colonialism around Africa, after so many years of Africa being subjected to take instruction from another man, yet Africa is not yet free. Little wonder Madiba, Nelson Mandela said, after 27 years in prison, that Africa, you are not yet free. You have already gained the freedom to be free. It is the conceptual West sitting in their houses, in their laboratory, cook our constitutions. It is pertinent and imperative for you to know that all the coup d'etat orchestrated in Africa were internally and externally influenced. Between 1963 to 2012, Africa witnessed 200 military coup d'etat. These coup d'etat were influenced by the conceptual West. As early as 1963, people like Sylvanus Olympio were taken out in Togo. As early as 1984, Thomas Sankara was assassinated in Burkina Faso. As early as Africans were regaining our independence, Patrice Lumumba was killed in Congo. And those who were not killed, they were taken out of power. Kwame Nkrumah was taken out of power in Ghana. Sylvanus Olympio was already down. Amilcar Cabral, Samuel Doe. But what about the Ethiopians? Ethiopians, when the Italians came to colonize them, Ethiopians stood their ground and fought the Italians in the Wall of Adowa. For Africa, yes, can defeat the European powers. But it's pertinent and imperative to know, why is Africa not independent today? Our independence has only been in paper and not in action. For when independence were given, they gave us the crown, but the jewelries were taken away from us. Oh Africa, when will you recognize the fact that you have so much to gain as one? Africa, you a continent that have so many rivers in your belly. When will your children fish from your rivers? Oh Africa, your children travel through the Mediterranean Sea only to become cleaners in Spain. But it is important to know that when Africa was regaining our independence, when Ghana gained our independence as the first country to do that in West Africa, Kwame Nkrumah, in the eve of Ghanaians' independence in 1957, said it loud and clear to the Ghanaians, and he said, our independence as Ghanaians means nothing if other Africans are not independent. It means nothing if Algeria is not independent. It means nothing if Angola is not independent. It means nothing if Gabon, if Niger, if Nigeria, if Tunisia, if Togo, if Uganda, if Zambia, if Zimbabwe, if Eritrea is not independent. Our independence means nothing if we cannot feed ourselves. Oh, Kwame Nkrumah reminded them on that day that Africa is not poor. It is Africans who are poor, because she has failed to take from the numerous resources that has been embedded in her. Oh, Kwame Nkrumah will say therefore, whom the town criers ring the bell for. He said on that day that Africa is the only continent that produces that which she does not consume and consumes that which she does not produce. Kwame Nkrumah had the foresight of a Jewish prophet and the humility of a Nigerian carpenter. Kwame Nkrumah wanted the United States of Africa. He said it in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. He said it in Casablanca, Morocco. He said to them, we need to be independent. We need to be united again. As Africans, we need to have one army. one currency, one foreign policy, so we can tackle social political problem and the growing neo-colonialism and imperialism that is alive and well in Africa. But some of African leaders refuse to listen to Kwame Nkrumah out of their own selfishness, because they never wanted the United States of Africa. They wanted to be in charge of their little sovereignty, because the conceptual West was already influencing their thought process. And so Africa was divided into groups. The Casablanca group. This group was made up of Ghana, Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Guinea, and Mali. This group and so many other countries in Africa say, yes, Africa must be free, and Africa must be free now, and we must be united, and we must be united now or never. That was the opinion, the tenet, the perspective. That was the ideology of Casablanca group. There is another group called the Brazzaville group. The Brazzaville group were made up of Cameroon, made up of Congo Brazzaville, Ivory Coast, Senegal, among others. They said, no, Africa do not need to be united. Just control your little sovereignty and you will make the continent great. And we had another group called the Moravia group. The Moravia group were made up of Nigeria, Ethiopia, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and many others. They said, yes, Africa needs to be united, but not now. It's going to be a gradual process. But the Casablanca group countered them and said, no, if we are to be united, it must be now or never. For if we are not united, the conceptual West will come back. And how can a country as small as Central African Republic tackle foreign policy if Africa is not united? Then, instead of having United States of Africa, we ended up having OAU, Organization of African Unity, when 30 charter independent African countries sat in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, on 25th May 1963. OAU was formed to tackle Africa's political, social problems and to fight imperialism and neo-colonialism. But OAU has been described as a toothless bulldog by so many commentators. We wanted the United States of Africa, but we ended up having OAU, and our problem still lingers, for OAU have not in a long form solved our problems. Today, Kwame Nkrumah was right. Today, the Casablanca group was right. Because in Africa today, Africa has become a jungle from which anyone can hunt without consequence. Oh, look at what is happening in Congo. Oh, Congo, a country that has so many natural resources. But we will allow Congo to rest. We will let Congo to use the mineral resources that was embedded and bestowed in our ground. Congo, an irony and a paradox at the same time, for the conceptual West have used her and dumped her. What of South Africa? Oh, South Africa. South Africa, a country in Africa that is barely the name of a location and not an indigenous name. It was Hendrik Verwoerd who instituted the apartheid regime in South Africa. And then Madiba Nelson Mandela said, no, our people will not be segregated. For Hendrik Verwoerd deceived South Africans and said, let us go into regional development. And then he used the resources of the blacks to develop the places of the whites. Mandela fought, and he was labeled a rebel. And 27 years he came out and freedom was found for Africa. When will you recognize the fact that you have everything it takes to make a great continent? Your children abandon everything in you And the only hope she has is to be recolonized a second time in Europe and America. Africa, you are the only continent in the world that is being referred in a derogatory statement as Anglophone Africa, Francophone Africa, Bussophone Africa. And in common years, if we are not taking care, we will be referred as Chinaphone Africa. For every year in Africa, we graduate thousands of engineers, but yet our stadiums are being constructed by the Europeans, by the Arabs, and by Asians. Where is the technocratics of our continent? They lied to us, they deceived us, and told the town criers to tell us that politics is a dirty game. So the idiots, the fools, the ragamuffins decided they would go into politics. But the technocratics and the enlightened, the intellectuals, those who were supposed to go into politics, shied away because they say it's a dirty game. And then the idiots and the ragamuffins who went into politics started controlling the fate of the doctors and lawyers, because now they are the president and the governors of Africa. When will you realize that even the technocratics do not need to sit on the sideline and watch? You must take your fate by your hands and change the situation of things. Oh, Africa. A lot of people have argued the need for Africa having United States of Africa. They have argued that sovereignty and territory should be respected. But this single act of demonstration should teach you and enlighten you on why Africa needs to be independent. And in that independence, meaning that we need to have United States of Africa. Sit down, take a pen and a paper, and pay attention to the demonstration I'm about to give you. Watch and listen. This broom here represents the 54 sovereign African states. Watch them. This is Algeria. This is Angola. This is Benin. This is Burundi. This is Burkina Faso. This is Chad. This is Cape Verde. This is Comoros. This is Central African Republic. This is Cameroon. This is Egypt. This is Equatorial Guinea. This is Ivory Coast. This is Gabon. This is Ghana. This is Gambia. This is Ethiopia. This is Eritrea. This is Kenya. This is Lesotho. This is Liberia. This is Mali. This is Malawi. This is Mauritania. This is Madagascar. This is Mauritius. This is Rwanda. This is Nigeria. This is Mozambique. This is Namibia. This is Seychelles. This is Sao Tome and Principe. This is Senegal. This is Tunisia. This is South Africa. This is Tanzania. This is Uganda. This is Zambia. And this is Zimbabwe. This is 54 independent sovereign state of Africa. Watch it. I pick Nigeria. Nigeria is dealing with foreign policy. Nigeria cannot achieve anything. Nigeria cannot do anything to foreign policy. Angola cannot do anything alone to foreign policy. Morocco cannot do anything alone to foreign policy. The same thing with all the African states, because when they are one, they have little power. When they are one, they are as weak as anything. When they are one, they cannot stand neocolonialism. When they are one, they cannot stand imperialism. When they are one, they cannot stand foreign policy. When they are one, they cannot stand neocolonialism. When they are one, they cannot do with European Union. When they are one, they cannot do with United Nations. When they are one, Libya cannot succeed. When she is one, Ghana cannot succeed. When she is one, Ivory Coast cannot succeed. When she is one, Tanzania cannot succeed. When she's won, Lesotho cannot succeed. When she's won, Algeria cannot succeed. When she's won, Namibia can succeed. When she's won, Eritrea cannot succeed. When she's won, Ethiopia can succeed. When she's won, Namibia can succeed. When she's won, Mali can succeed. When she's won, Mozambique can succeed. When she's won, Senegal can succeed. When it's won, Saint-Charles can succeed. When it's won, Sao Tome and Principe can succeed. When it's won, they cannot succeed. But look at Africa, the 54 of us coming out. Look at us. Look at us. The 54 of us coming together, united as a bunch of broom. If we can come together in unity, one foreign policy, one army, one international passport, having one foreign policy, having one sole proprietor, having one energy, one synergy. If we can be in pari passu, if we can be in synergy, if they can be a deliberate, positive, conscious, conspicuous conspiracy between the 54 African continents, we can achieve a lot. Look at the 54 of us facing international policy. We can achieve. Look at us facing foreign policy. That will be impact. That is the essence of unity. That was what Kwame Nkrumah saw in 1957. That was what he was talking about in Casablanca, Morocco. That was what he was talking about in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. That was what the Casablanca group stood, that Africa must be united, because when we are united, we can achieve a whole lot of things. When we are united, we will be undisputable. When we are united, foreign policy will do us nothing. When we are united, there will be no civil wars in Africa. When we are united, Morocco will not be marginalized. When we are united, Congo will not be exploited. When we are united, Sudan and South Sudan will not fight. When we are united, there will be no war in Nigeria. When we are united, any country that wishes to succeed in Africa can go, because we are one foreign policy. And when we sweep and when we wash, Africa will achieve, because unity is our bond. If Africa must be free from neocolonialism, if we must wash our names and write our names in the sands of time, the 54 independent African states must achieve what our predecessors stood for: African unity. If not, and non-negotiable, because this is the strength. This is exactly what the colonial masters do not want us to know. They don't want us to know that we need to be united. You need another demonstration. Look at your 5 fingers. Have you ever seen a man who wants to throw a broom and keep only one, or keep this or one? No, you can achieve little with that. These are fingers, can achieve nothing. But when it is come together like a fist, it can achieve great deal of things. Africa, there is need to be united. There is need to focus on one. A Nigerian should be able to travel to Ghana without much scrutiny, just as an European is allowed to travel all around Europe without scrutiny. A Ghanaian should be able to go to Lesotho. A man from Tanzania should be able to go to Kenya. Africa, You must be united. You must be united because our survival depends on it. We can do it and we will do it, because if we don't do it, we will be done. Because the conceptual West are not sleeping. They are always alive, waiting when we will be asleep. A country like Central African Republic cannot stand. And that was why when they came to Congo and they moved Patrice Lumumba, they brought Mahmoud Bendu and Zambanga. And when they came, they brought in Joa Bede Bokassa. People that did not know what leadership was, simply because that we were one divided Africans. What can we achieve when we are united? Oh, Africa, you will be so powerful. You will remember the days of Timbuktu. You will remember the days of your greatest leaders ever to exist. You will remember Mensa Musa, the richest man ever to engrave the surface of the earth in Africa. You can do it. And it starts with the youths, you and I, because our ancestors made us to understood that wisdom is the property of the youth and the strength is of the youth. And even if you say that elders, war is won by the wisdom of the elders and by the strength of the youth, African youth must recognize their potential. That is why an English philosopher, Alexander Pope, said, a society where its young men and women are in a constant state of slumber will never recognize her potential. African youth must be focused and stop paying attention to things that are inconsequential. If you must watch football, remember that you are an African. Is it Big Brother Niger? You must remember that you are an African. For this is the way of Africans should go. United Africa. For this is what even the town criers remember. And now there is so much hunger, poverty in the land. A lot of people have asked, why is there poor people in Africa? Why is Africa passing through so many poverty despite the fact that she is blessed in many terms of natural resources? Oh, Africa. But this is the concept of it. Africa has become a dumping waste, a place where the conceptual West, the colonial masters, come to take their natural resources and they go to their home to build. Oh, little wonder that oil was discovered in Uribiri, refinery was built in Kaduna. But it is the government that taught us that nearest to resources leads to nearest to industry. If you discover a gold in this place, it is considered that you will manufacture gold in that place. And in essence, you are going to build a good manufacturing industry. But crude oil was discovered in Uribiri in 1956 and finally was built in Kaduna. Even the town criers cried to stress injustice. And the Easterners for a long time are disgruntled that all their seaports has been shut down just for them to make their way to Lagos. Lagos State happens to be the smallest state in the country, but yet the most populated, because everything has been concentrated in it. And people only go there for their business. It has been made the commercial nerve of the place. And the people of the country scream, why not diversify the economy? Why monopolize? Why still doing that which caused war in the past? And town criers have screamed, yet nothing has been done. This concept will teach you the reason why so many things happen in the country. Have you ever wondered why you do not see the children of the elites in your place? Have you ever wondered why you have not ever come across the daughters of the superstructures in your place? It is not coincidence. It was meant to be like that. The system of the country that you live in Africa were structured to keep the poor poor and the rich rich. Why do you think they have urban migration? Why do you think they have social structure of the state? Now let me teach you so that you will know that the society was structured to be this way. If you pay scrupulous attention and sedulous attention to details, you will find out that when you go to some certain areas in your country, some certain buildings are not allowed to be there except you can afford to build a particular kind of structure. Then you will be allowed. And anyone who can build that kind of structure, know that the person is well to do. There is a difference between being powerful, being wealthy, being rich, and being able to make ends meet. Power is the highest form of authority. A man of power is greater than a man with wealth. A man of wealth is greater than a man that is rich. A man that is rich is greater than a man that makes ends meet. This is how society was structured. You see, in the image I'm about to show you, pay attention to it. This is how society in Africa was structured. It was born and done by the conceptual West, and our people inherited it. Listen, the Western economy was built on lack, but the ancient African economy was never built on lack. That was why when Mensa Musa of Mali was passing through Egypt, he was throwing gold up and down. And when he was throwing gold, Egyptian economy fell because a man of wealth was passing. But we over time dropped the concept of African wealth and adopted the concept of Western European wealth, which was built on lack. Someone has to be poor for the rich to flourish and to thrive, and that is not the way of an African. Look at this place I'm showing you. The people in the upper place are the super class. The people in the second place are the down super class, and you can see the average class, and you can see the middle class, and you can see the poor. This is how society in Africa was structured by the conceptual West. You see the powerful. These people are the people we call the opus mundus, the superstructures. They are the opulent, vintage, zenith level of the society. Oh, little wonder, after being a president of America, you are not allowed to drive yourself in the street because you now belong to the opus superstructure, the people in the high class. You can see how people are carrying the people in the high class so that their feet will not touch the ground. The people in the high class, the superstructures, are the people who keep the society running. They dictate what happens in the world. They dictate if gay marriage will stand. They dictate if lesbianism will stand, and they force it through the throat of people, through their escape route of reality, through their picture window of the world, Hollywood. And Hollywood push it down to Nollywood, and Nollywood push it down to our system, and our children are accepting what they do not want to accept. And you see the people after the super class, these are your business tycoons, the Dangotes. These are the people who monopolize the economy. The superstructures give them the monopoly to do what they're supposed to do. And they even tell the town criers, saying to the people that they are the best. These are your Dangotes. So they control your economy. They control what you eat. If you are going to eat garbage, they control. If you are going to eat fertilizer made goods, they control. These people most times do not afford to be classy. And under them, you can see those who are carrying them having their swords. These are your celebrities. These are the people whom you cannot see on a daily. When you see them, you try to touch them. You call them your celebrities because you don't see them often. Society was created to be that way. That is why once in a while you see them and they throw money ups and down. You can see the way they are balanced with their swords, showing off their money, being conspicuous, being attractive for you, the poor will never reach. And you can see the middle class. Look at their tummy. Look at how they are seated. These are the people who head the ministers and the parastatals in your country. They are the people who can afford the plane tickets. You don't see their daughters because they don't want you to be liberated by poverty through their daughters. You can see the way they are balanced with their big tummies. They are people who have names listed of ghost workers. They are people who have names that do not exist in parastatals and ministers. They are the people who make sure they embezzle public fund. Look at their big tummies in that picture. And then after them, you have the people below them. These are the lower class. The lower class are people who make little money from their salary. They are the people we call the minimum wage workers. The money they make is enough for what they will eat. They can make their cars. They can make the little things they have. These ones, you can see them in your street. They are the ones you call the rich in your place because they have little money to flaunt around. Then the people down, they are the poor because they are the one carrying the weight of all the people. You can see them. They cannot stand. They are the people who live from hand to mouth. They are the destitute. They are people who are suffering on the daily. They are most Africans. They are most Moroccans. They are most Nigerians. They are most Algerians. They are most Senegalese. They are most Burkinabes. They are most South Africans. They are most people in Africa. They can achieve nothing. You can see that the poor was never meant to see the rich. The distance between where the poor is and where the rich is too far. So that the daughter of the poor will not see the son of the rich, or the son of the poor will not see the daughter of the rich, so that this different superstructure will not interchange and liberate them from poverty. And listen, because our society in Africa was structured like this, a lot of things have been done. Information is being denied those that stay in the lower class, because no matter how intelligent, no matter how enlightened, no matter how exposed you are, if you do not get to where the superstructure is, where the super class is, there's a certain level of information that will be denied. That is why the philosophers say information is power, knowledge is liberating. But these people who are our leaders in Africa have handicapped every form of knowledge, every form of development, because African economy was adopted to be built on lack. That is why the philosophers say, oh, even integrity needs money to be maintained. Integrity needs money to be maintained, because the greatest philosophers you know today were all rich. Aristotle was rich. Socrates was rich. Plato was rich. If they were not rich, you wouldn't have heard their voice, because there were so many philosophers who were more philosophical than them but had no money to publish what they have written. Oh, Africa, you need money to flourish. And that money you have beneath your soil, but you must wake up to reality that your political leaders, using your religious leaders, have kept you in a static place, a place of no development. They have kept you in a place where you cannot see your eyes, because your eyes have been closed. Knowledge have been taken. That is why John Maxwell said that knowledge is indeed a true test of character. Leadership is indeed a true test of character in the hands of a person of integrity. It causes tremendous benefit. In the hands of a tyrant, it causes terrible destruction. And many leaders in Africa are tyrants, causing terrible destruction everywhere around Africa. And African youth, the only dream they have is to graduate and go to Europe, and they don't mind becoming cleaners in Spain. They don't mind getting married to older people just to be called a British citizen, just to be called United States of American green card holder. Africa has become a graveyard where people who work abroad after retirement come home and be buried, and our potential has been buried under the carpet. For many centuries, Africa, you survived slave trade, and then they brought colonialism. You survived. Right now, you are suffering imperialism and neo-colonialism. We are suffering in the hands of our brothers. This is what scholars call control bourgeoisie. People who have eyes they cannot see, pseudo intellects. We are being governed by men who do not have conscience, men who prefer to spend our money abroad than to develop our place. These men are the lead definition of ambassadors of poverty. Their annals are abroad, their head is at home, and they mess on our face, and we do nothing about it. Africa, you must realize your potential. You must remember your legend. You must remember the words of Malcolm X. They will pay one of us to kill us, so they can blame us that it's one of us that killed us. You must remember the words of Marcus Garvey when he said, our survival stands on us being unified, because we cannot do without it. You must remember the words of Kwame Nkrumah when he said that Africa must be united. You must remember the words of Nelson Mandela when he said that we are not yet free, we have only gained the freedom to be free. You must remember the words of Martin Luther King Jr. when he said, oh, I have a dream that one day my children shall not be judged by the content of their skin, by the content of their character. You must remember who you are as an African. Your history is not governed around slavery. You were the king before they came. You were the king in Ethiopia. Oh, Empelo Heseresia. You were the king in Mali. Oh, King Mensa Musa. You were the king in Nigeria. You were the queen in Zaria. You were the king in Egypt. Oh, Africa. You can recognize your potential. You can stand your ground and tell the Europeans that we can do it. If our ancestors did it, we can do it. The town criers can do it. The public speakers can do it. And we can hold our grounds and liberate our continent, because these continents were handed over to us by our ancestors, and it is our duty and responsibility to hold it. This we can do. So we must do it, and it must be done, because if it is not done, we will be done. Africa, wisdom is the principal thing. But it's pertinent to say that when the Italians came to colonize the Ethiopians stood on their ground and fought them in the war of Adowa, and they said no, Ethiopians must never be colonized. But it's pertinent again to know that there is a tribe in Africa that has fought against slavery in the past, and that was the Igbos. History made the town criers to know that in 1803, 75 Igbo slaves were being taken to America to work in plantations, and when they get to St. Simeon Island, Dumban Creek, Georgia country, the slaves held their hands and began to speak in their language. They attacked the slave masters and threw them overboard, held their hands and decided to walk into the waters, and they spoke in their native language, and they said, such words touched the heads of a town crier. Which means the water spirit that brought us will take us back home. The slaves hold their hands and walk into the water, and they drown. History records that was the first fight against slave trade, against human marginalization. For the Igbos in Nigeria refused to be taken because they prefer the freedom of death than the freedom of men from the stars, because they remember the words of the paradox of the literature and philosophers that said it is better to die than to live on your knees, because for slaves to live is to die and to die is to live. And that takes us back to woman African worship, Timbuktu, defending their land, knowing that the blood of an African can never be used for wrongs. Oh Africa, what has happened to your concept of strength? What has happened? to standing against injustice. But when we look at it, we found out that we have lost our agility and our confidence because we have lost our concept of belief. For the ancient African believed in reincarnation, and that was why when he go to war, it's either he win or he dies. And if he die in a war, he believes that it is gain because he will definitely return. Because for an ancient African, death is not the end of it all. They believe when a man dies doing good or die in a battle, he will return. So because of such mindset, because of such ideology and philosophy, when an African stands against the face of obstacle, he gives in everything he has. But with the concept of the recent things happening in Africa, an African is afraid to die. An African has become a living liver loom, so he does not want to die. Therefore, he leaves himself to live on the knees. Our ancestors will say Tofiakwa. This is not the concept of agility that we were built upon. For the Igbos in 1803, Georgia country, St. Simeon Island, fought death itself, believing that they will return as free men. Oh, little wonder they sang again in their native language. Meaning the water spirit that brought us will take us back home. Oh, the town criers remember. Just yesterday, my uncle said to me, "Town crier, your generation has failed us. Your generation are involved in cybercrime. Your generation has accepted and adopted same-sex marriage. Your generation, man is marrying man and woman is marrying woman. Your generation, young men are involved in ritual." I bent my head and I looked him into his eyes and I said, "Uncle, with all due respect, your generation has failed us too. Tinubu is your generation. Buhari is your generation. Mahmoud Sissoko Kukumbendu and Zambanga was your generation. Shah Bede Bukasa was your generation. Your generation has failed us too." My uncle, being caught up in my truth, bent his head and said, "My son, we are birds of the same feather." I said, "Uncle, if I blame you and you blame me, tomorrow my son will blame me. Why can't we stop the blame game and put hands together and make Africa great? For we cannot keep blaming one another. It is time to make Africa great." We must remember the words of the English philosopher Alexander Pope. A society where its young men and women are in a constant state of slumber will not recognize their potential. Africa, don't forget that war is won by the wisdom of the elders and by the strength of the youths. And we, the youths of Africa, must make maximum use of that which we have so that we will not regret in our dying bed. Africa, remember, African youths, we must liberate our continent. It can be done and it must be done, because if it is not done, we will be done. For Wisdom Africa is the principal thing. He who has ears, let him hear the words of the modern day town crier.
Mother Africa, it is you who say the dead man will one day get tired of sleeping. But for so long, you have slept in slumber. Mother Africa, wake up and become great again. The stomach is never scared. That's why it takes the lead. But the giant of Africa, Nigeria, for so long has taken the back seat. Ghana, Gabon, Gambia, Guinea. These 4G networks are no longer strong as they used to be. Even our one-time wonder kid Rwanda is no longer wonderful. The only thing we cook out of this continent are wonderful singers. And the only time we are twice as tall is in albums. But in reality, we are all made in Lagos. Puppets of the Western world, Asia dumping grounds, borrowers of used products of gumbo diplomacy. We consume that which we do not produce and produce that which we do not consume. We are all laboratory to white man's ideas and perceptions, and the only thing they cook out of us is lies and propaganda. Our leaders are all mean, but if you ask them, they will tell you they are all better than India mean. I mean, enough of the blame game. But why must Africa only be great in Black Panther and Wakanda the only thing that lives forever? Benin Empire, where is our artifacts? Sorry, I forgot. It's being kept for us safe at the British Museum. These men must think we are foolish and crazy at the same time. But who am I to say these things? I am just a single majority, a voice in the wilderness screaming, prepare the way for greatness, for Africa is Akebran, and Akebran must be great again. Wisdom, Africa. Wisdom is the principal thing.
Wait, don't screw, pay attention. Have you ever wondered why most movie industries in the world are adopting the name Wood? Hollywood, Nollywood, Bollywood, Gollywood. What is wrong with them and Wood? Do you think it's a coincidence? I don't think so. Pay attention. Listen, there's a reason they are adopting the name Woods. Listen, thousands of years ago, there were a system in charge of Europe. They were called the Druids. The Druid system. These people were the ones controlling Europe. They were the doctors, the lawyers, the engineers. They're the ones that run the educational system. They were so powerful, very powerful. And one of the instruments that the Druids used was a magic wand. The magic wand, just like the one that the magicians use. They use the magic wand. And the magic wand that the magicians use are made from the holy trees, made out of the holy wood. The magic wand that a magician uses is made from the holy tree, that are made from the holy wood. Now, Hollywood, from the magic wand, the movie industry, Hollywood. Do you see the synergy? Now, why should a movie industry adopt the name that is gotten from a place where a magic wand is being made? What is the synergy? What is the relationship? What is the sympathical? Look at it. The thing is that the movie industry is not different from the magic wand that the magician uses. What does the magician do with the magic wand? The magician uses the magic wand to control the mind of his victim. When he wants you to think how he wants you to think, he uses the magic wand to control you. So the movie industry adopted the name Hollywood because the movie industry performs the duty of the magic wand. The movie industry controls your mind. The movie industry states how you should think. The movie industry is the one that sets an agenda for the world. That is why when they want to influence our culture, what they do is to put it in the movie industry. When you watch it, immediately you start behaving how they want you to behave. 40 years ago, when you see a man who sat his pants on television, you say to Fiakwa. But today, a whole lot of our boys are sagging their pants. It is now like a norm because it was infused through the movie industry, through the Hollywood, through the Nollywood, through the Bollywood, through the Gollywood. And today, we are performing how they want us to perform. That is why in the early 1900s, Marshall McLuhan came up with a theory called magic bullet theory, which can also be called stimulus response theory, which can also be called hypodermic needle theory. He called it magic bullet theory because the media is like a magical wand. It controls how you should think. The media, especially the Hollywood, it is the window picture of the world. The opus mundus, the superstructure, use the Hollywood to make us think how they want us to think. So the movie industry in Africa adopted the same thing and called their own Nollywood, Gollywood, because they are the ones that set agenda on how we should think. That is why Marshall McLuhan came up with a theory called agenda setting theory. He called it agenda setting theory to state that the media sets an agenda on how you should think. That agenda setting theory states that although The mass media do not have the power to state what and how you should think, but to a great extent, the mass media is obviously influential in what we as a nation, as a society, and as a group of people think in a particular period and in a given society. That is why theories have stated that the media controls our mind. And what is theory? Theories are logical, coherent, systematic group of acceptable prepositions that state how things are done in a field of study using a phenomenon. Ohoja in 2014 stated that knowledge does not exist in a vacuum. In every field of discipline, there must be a body of work that states how things are done in a given phenomenon. Now, in mass communication, in social science, theories fall under two categories. These categories are social scientific theories. These social scientific theories are consisting of generalizations. These generalizations are derived from systematic observation and objective analysis of mass media variables, employing methods. These methods are gotten from empirical research from the field of social science, such as experimentation, such as content analysis, such as field survey, such as opinions, tenets, views, perception, ideology, geographical modeling that state how things were yesterday, how things are today, and how things are expected to be tomorrow. So the media industry is what creates an agenda for us. It is what creates our reality. It is what states how we should think. It is what paints a picture for the world for us. That is why you must be media selective. I call it media selectivity. If you do not select what you allow your mind to consume, you are going to be thinking like a robot. Because the media industry, the Hollywood, the Bollywood, the Gollywood, all the woods in the world are made to set an agenda for you. So you must control your mind by controlling what you allow your mind to consume as a media consumption. You must be mindful. If not, before you will know what you have become, you will become a product of gumbo diplomacy and Machiavellian manipulation. Africa, you must be careful of what you allow your children to watch on the television. You yourself must be careful, because even the cartoons your children watch, our culture has been influenced through the cartoons, the language, the vulgar, the expletives. So the media industry adopted the word Hollywood because of where the magic wand is gotten from, the holy tree, which is gotten from the Hollywood. Hollywood, magic wand, Hollywood. Use your head. They are all in simpatico. They are all in synergy. They are all in pari passu. There is a deliberate, conscious, conspicuous analysis between these two factors. Be careful of what you consume, else you will be a product of gumbo diplomacy. For Wisdom Africa is the principal thing.
Don't screw. Wait. If you are seeing this video, you are blessed, because the message you are about to hear is probably what will liberate you from the social construct of the world. Pay attention. Don't screw. Just listen. Look at this video. Look at the picture itself. What do you see? Look at it very well. What do you see in this picture? Okay, now pay attention. Pay attention. Let me explain to you what is in this picture so that you will be liberated from the false social construct of the world. Now listen. This is an allegory of the cave. This is Plato's allegory of the cave. Now, what is an allegory? It is a story, a play, a structure in which each character or event is a symbol representing an idea or a quality, such as truth, evil, or death. Now, let me explain. Look at this picture. Look at those people that are labeled most people. Look at the most people. Look at those most people. Look at them very well. What are they doing? They are looking at the wall. They are looking at
a wall. Okay? They are the society. They are most people in the world. They are seeing an image being displayed for them on a wall. They are seeing it. Now, do you know that what is being shown to them is a mastermind, an act by the people behind them? Look at those people called the media. Those people that dress like KKK. Look at what they are holding. It is what they are holding up that those most people are actually seeing. It is a reflect of what the media is holding that those people, most people, are seeing on the wall. Do you see how big those things are looking on that wall compared to how it is in the hands of the media? Now, the people who are labeled most people are most people in the society. That is the television they are watching. That is Hollywood. That is Nollywood. That is Bollywood. That is social media. That is the lies they sell. That is the nudity they sell. That is the pornography they sell. Now, the media is the one projecting what you take as reality, projecting what you take as truth. The media is, in a way, influencing the thoughts of these most people in this picture. The media is the one projecting what they see and take as reality. So the most people in this picture are the reality. They are the people in the world. When you watch television, you believe it. When you see something on social media, you believe it. You are among those categories of most people. Yes, you are among the most category. If you are somebody who goes naked because your favorite celebrity goes naked because of what you see on social media, you are among the most people. Because your social reality is as a result of the reflect of what the media shows to you. The media, look at them. That is the big scene of the world. That is the picture window of the world. The Nollywood, the Bollywood, what you watch in Big Brother Nigeria, the media is projecting your reality. Look at it there. Now, look at the power behind the media. Look at that thing that looks like fire. Look at it. Pay a scrupulous attention to that thing that looks like fire. You will see that it is not fire. It is an image of people shining like fire. Those people are the power behind the media. They are the ones that tell the media what to tell you. They are the ones that project the media to project an idea or a concept or a perspective for you to see and believe to be true. The power behind the media is bigger than the media. They are the ones that sponsor the media, and they are the ones that tell the media what to do. And the media cannot say no, because he that pays the viper dictates the tune. So these people that are the power behind the media, I call them the elites. Okay? I call them the superstructures, the opus mundus, the mafiosos. They are the ones that determines what the media will show on the big screen for the most people to see. Now, look at the truth seekers. These truth seekers are the people who are trying to liberate themselves from the social construct. If you are watching this video, you are among the 3% of the truth seekers, because you being on this page shows that you are seeking information that will liberate you. Now, the truth seekers want to liberate themselves from the cave, because this thing you are seeing is a cave. The society itself is a cave. It's a cave and a cage. Now, the truth seekers are trying to come up. So when the truth seekers are telling you that there's something you are missing, you don't understand, because you are among the most people that the media is projecting reality for. Now, the truth seekers are trying to come out of the cave. Are you seeing them? Now, look at the people on the real life. Look at the real life. You see those two guys on top of their, looking at the birds, looking at the moon and a jar of water. They are the people in the real life. They are the people who have seen the light. They are the grandmasters, the masterminds. They are people who are not slaves to the system. So, but the irony of the society is this: when these people that are outside the cage, outside the cave, these real life people are telling most people that are in the cave that they are in the cave, they don't believe it. They don't believe it. The people that are labeled most people believe that the people in the real life are crazy, whereas it is the most people that are crazy. That is why the philosopher said, categorically that we, whom we are seen dancing, were thought to be insane by those who could not even hear the music. So you see, you are not totally free. Everything you watch, everything you see on social media is being projected to what influence your thinking and your perspective. That is why Marshall McLuhan stated what the media theory is. He stated that theories are logical, coherent, systematic group of acceptable prepositions that states and determines how things are being studied in a field of study. And then he came up with a theory that is called magic bullet theory, okay, which can be called needle hypodermic theory, which can also be called transmission belt theory, meaning that the media controls and stimulates your mind most times on what they want you to think about. And that is exactly what agenda setting theory does. Look at the media in this picture. They are the ones setting agenda for these most people, because it is what the media show them that they believe. Look at how the cave made the little thing that the media is showing them to be big in their eyes. Look at the media. Look at the truth seekers. Look at the power behind the media. Just look at it very well. Look at the most people. Look at the media. Look at the power behind the media. Look at the truth seekers. And then look at those people in real life. If you have been watching this video from the beginning till now, it means that you are among the truth seekers, because most people that started this video stopped watching it. So they are among the most people that the media is projecting things for, and that the power behind the media is in control of. But if you are watching this video to this end, you are among the truth seekers, or maybe you are among those in real life, seeing life the way it's supposed to be. Freedom is essential. I wish I can show you my face so I can demonstrate this better, but I needed you to see this picture coherently so you can understand what we are trying to pass across Africa. Wisdom is the principal thing.
When we try to blame the colonial masters for all the atrocities that happened in Africa and is happening in Africa today, a whole lot of young Africans, especially the new generation, those who want to sound woke and enlightened, they say, stop blaming the colonial masters. For once, take responsibility. You have been free for the past 60 years. And I ask them, how free are we? They say, oh, we are as free as the bird. You know, when people want to describe how free they are, they use the bird as simile. We are as free as the bird. And I do not disagree with them. I agree. I agree. Africa, we are as free as the bird. But the question is the bird free? No, look at the sky. Is the bird free? The birds are not free. If the birds are free, they will be walking on the ground. They'll be walking, but they are not free, because humans have the tendency of getting them and putting them in the cage. So an African is as free as the bird. That's why I have refused to say I am as free as the bird. I am as free as the air, because the birds are not free. That is why Chinua Achebe in his book Things Fall Apart said, and naked the bird said, since the hunters have learned to shoot without aiming, I, a naked the bird, has learned to fly without perching. Connotatively and denotatively, Achebe was trying to let you know that even the birds are not free. That is why Nelson Mandela, after 27 years in prison, he came out, became a president in 1994, and he said, oh Africa, you are not yet free. You have only gained the freedom to be free. You are not free. You are not. Look at your judicial system. Why do you think your law is called Westminster model? Because your laws were made for you in the conceptual West. The laws you have is not even your laws. It was made for you in the conceptual West. Look at your lawyers. When they want to give judgment, they wear wig. Puppets of the Western world. That is what they are saying. Looking like monkeys. Puppets of the Western world. Look at them. You can still look at Africa and see the remnants of the colonial powers. Africans were designed to fail. Africans were designed to fail. Listen, the failure of the third world countries is the evidence of the colonial powers. Let me say it again. The failure of third world country is the evidence of the failure of the colonial masters, because they designed Africa to fail. That is why Fela Kuti said in his song, "Teacher, don't teach me nonsense." Who taught us coup d'etat? The Europeans, the British. But they failed to tell our soldiers that the queen is always the queen. Coup d'etat never happened in England. No, they preserved their own. And that was why when we were regaining independence, when people like Kwame Nkrumah, when people like Sylvanus Olympio, Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, Nnamdi Azikiwe, when they were fighting for independence, the colonial masters were grooming soldiers that would take over from them in a jiffy. So in 1966, Kwame Nkrumah was removed from power. Thomas Sankara was killed. Sylvanus Olympio was killed. Patrice Lumumba was executed. And they brought soldiers who do not know what military, who do not know the standard of military, who do not even know what leadership is all about. And you say you are free when your leadership is being controlled from the conceptual West. Look at Nigeria's election the other day. Bola Ahmed Tinubu even had to go to the Britain. All of them went to Chatham House, the presidential aspirant. Why? They even refused to honor the invitation of the media house in Nigeria. They all went to Chatham House. You think it was the Nigerians in Britain that they went to tell what they would do when they become president? No, they went to show themselves to the colonial masters. Master, I am here. If I become the president, I will make sure that the crude oil is still being brought to you. Please just put the crown on my head. Oh, when we gained independence, or rather when we regained independence, the crown was given to us, but the jewelries were taken. The better you know that, the better for you, Africa. That is why we must say no to neocolonialism. We must say no to imperialism, because we are not yet free. We have only gained the freedom to be free, and we must continue to remind the conceptual West that the failure of the third world countries, the failure of Africa, is an evidence of the failure of the colonial powers. We must remind them, because the Jews still remind them of the Holocaust. So we must remind them of everything that they did in Africa. But as we remind them, we must build our continent, and Africa must be great again. For Wisdom Africa, wisdom is the principal thing. The difference between a rebel and a patriot depends on who controls the government. The day the rebel controls the government, that day the rebel becomes the patriot, while the patriot becomes the rebel. Pay attention. Paul Kagame, the current president of Rwanda, as long as the government of Rwanda was concerned in 1990, Paul Kagame was a rebel, because he was the leader of the Rwandan Patriotic Front, a rebel armed force that invaded Rwanda in 1990. But in 2000, Paul Kagame became the president of Rwanda. That day, he ceases from being a rebel and he becomes a patriot. And all those who were previously the patriot all became rebel. In South Africa, Madiba, Nelson Mandela, as long as the apartheid regime of South Africa was concerned, in 1962, Mandela was a rebel. Little wonder they sent him to prison for 27 years. But after 27 years, freedom was found. And in 1994, Madiba Nelson Mandela, on the 10th of May 1994, became the president of South Africa. That day, Mandela ceases from being a rebel and he becomes a patriot. And all those who were previously against him all became rebel. Listen, as long as Sani Abacha was concerned, Olusegun Obasanjo was a rebel. Little wonder he sent him to prison. But upon the death of Abacha, Obasanjo was given state pardon and he became a president. Automatically, he has become a patriot. Now listen,
Government is periodic, but the voice of the people lasts forever. That is why the Greeks say vox populi vox Dei, the voice of the people is the voice of the gods. That is why your motion of support should not be based on who control the government. Your motion of support should be based on absolute what is right and what is wrong. Now look around your country. Who are those men and women that the government have labeled rebel that are in the prison right now? Look around. A day might come, they will become the patriot, and the people who are currently in charge of the government of the day will become the rebel. Because the table is still turning, because history has shown pontificatingly that the rebel can become the patriot and the patriot will become the rebel, based on what the people support. Africa, your motion of support should always be based on what is right and wrong. Because if it is based on who controls the government, you never can tell what tomorrow holds. Wisdom, Africa. Wisdom is the principal thing.